FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
We also played that bump music for our guest, Patrick Tuohey from the Show Me Institute. Patrick, happy Friday.
Thank you very much. Happy Friday to you as well.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So I've heard about these my entire reporting career, and that would be economic development corporations. In fact, I think St. Louis has one. I know Kansas City has one. What has Show Me found out about some of these EDCs?
So first of all, Economic Development Corporation is not a government agency. It's a 501c4, oftentimes a nonprofit organization, and they oftentimes advise city councils and TIF commissions, but they get their money from the subsidies that they give out. They get a cut. And so it puts them in this conflict of interest. You know, for example, Mark, if you and I were in charge of giving out tax dollars, but we got a percentage of the money we gave out, you and I would have a great incentive to give out more and more and more tax dollars.
Right.
And that's the case. And so people think, well, this is kind of a government group, and even if maybe they're a bit too eager to give out subsidies, they're not conflicted. But in fact, these economic development corporations are conflicted. And you and I spoke a few weeks ago about, you know, to what degree companies that receive TIF have to report the jobs they create. And after speaking with you, I confirmed it with the Department of Economic Development in Missouri that the employer that receives the subsidy not only calculates the job creation themselves, but they get to define what a new job is. And so they may, for example, take seasonal employment and count it as new hires, even though those same people may have worked the previous year and were laid off.
And it's temporary.
Right. So it's, you know, you and I are dutifully paying our taxes, and we assume that it's going to go to infrastructure, to, making sure the sewers work, going to police. But more and more of it in our cities are going to developers, and the people kind of in charge of watching the purse strings have an incentive to give even more to those developers.
Wow. So your particular example that you use in this case is from the Kansas City side of the state. What benefits were they seeing? So
in the past 16 years or so, the EDC budget has doubled. So around 2000, they got about $1 million from the city and a little bit less than that as a result of the fees from the subsidies they give out.
Okay.
But today, their budget is about $5 million. $1 million comes from the city, and $3 million is a result of those fees.
Okay.
And so, again, it's even if you're a saint, you still operate under this incentive structure where you really want to give out money. And so I asked them, I said, well, how many times have you said no to a developer? And they said, well, it doesn't really work that way. What happens is if you're a developer, you apply to the EDC, you fill out your paperwork, and they kind of help you along. And so they might say, well, you need to work on this to make sure you're in compliance and all that stuff. So they're kind of a partner. And, of course, they would be because they don't want to say no to anyone.
Sure.
But you and I who are paying our taxes, there's no incentive for them to say no. And I think what we need to do in Missouri and probably around the country is really drastically change the way we hand out subsidies so that there isn't this incentive to always say yes.
And that's something that probably needs to happen in Jeff City, right?
Most likely,
yes.
The legislature would have to do it. Now, St. Louis and Kansas City can probably do it on their own piecemeal, but it would be nice if the state came along and said, this really needs to be streamlined.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Direct people to the website, showmeinstitute.org. The title of this article is The EDC Gets It Wrong, the Economic Development Corporations. Patrick Tuohey, have a great weekend. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Absolutely. Good stuff there. That's what they do over there, is why you hear me tell you about the Show Me Institute all the time. It's good work, stories you're not going to see in your local media. So that's why it's important that we continue to support them.
Get more at 971talk.com.